Hello everyone. Today I'm making a video regarding atheists and how as Christians we can respond to atheists in their arguments and how we can debate them or have a discussion with them, a logical discussion.
Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is Lessons of 40 as always, and I seem to be on a bit of a roll at the moment, so I may as well keep that going. So yes, the lovely person on screen at the moment is Loverthinker, and this is her video, How to Debate an Atheist. Questions for an Atheist from a Christian. And as you can see, she's not the usual imbecile that I get coming through here, so I'm pretty sure some of her points will be well made and sound arguments. Let's play on.
To defend our faith and also to make them think about their faith. Because atheism, even though they say it's not a faith or it's not a religion, it's pretty much another religion because it's a set of belief systems. Even though believing in nothing, even though they say they believe in nothing, it's still a belief system to believe that there's nothing after death, to believe in evolution, etc. So it's still a belief system.
I really thought we were past this and we were actually going to have something new in the discussion. However, I see I'm going to have to go through the same old things as always, yet I shall continue to do so as is required. Atheism is not a faith, for one thing. A faith is a belief regardless of the evidence, so that doesn't sit with science and philosophy and atheism. Okay, moving on. You mention you mention evolution, you mention the afterlife. Atheism makes no claims on those two things. So atheism is not a belief system because atheism is merely the lack of belief in God. You can be an atheist yet still reject evolution or still believe in an afterlife. One person that did believe in the afterlife yet was an atheist was Alan Turing, and somewhat I hope that he was right after the way that he went. But yes, anyway, so your idea on what atheism is quite clearly misplaced, and I do not know how that's going to inflict the rest of your video.
So number one argument that a lot of atheists bring up to Christians is the Bible is too old to be reliable and it was written by men, therefore it's not reliable. Well, the argument that we can bring up to atheists when they bring this up is, do you believe in science books? Do you believe in math books? And do you believe in, any book of philosophy, etc.? If they say yes, then you say, well, why is that book more credible than the Bible when it was also written by men? And, it just makes no sense to use that, the Bible was written by men, to dismiss it. It makes absolutely no sense because everything we live on in terms of education, every book that was ever written in the education system was written by men. And yet a lot of it we regard as fact, like evolution.
Your argument here seems to be based upon misrepresenting our actual position. Our position isn't that the Bible was written by man, therefore God does not exist, or it is not God's word. The issue is that the Bible contains so many mistakes and so many factual and scientific errors, and also maths as well. It contains mathematical errors that, it could not possibly be inspired by an all-powerful God, who, if this was the end product, would have to be a complete imbecile. So that's really the argument. It's not that it was just written by man. So then when you go on to talk about science textbooks, etc., well, those are a little different. One reason why, they are all peer-reviewed. Also, we know who the authors were. The fact that the Bible, many aspects of it were forged, and many of the authors are not who they claim to be, and then even more parts were added even after the canon. For example, Jesus and the adulterer was not in the original canon. It was only added afterwards. So there's a real big difference here when you have one book which has been forged, has factual errors that have been tested, and mathematical errors which have been tested, and then you have these books that have been shown to contain factually correct information, yet those books can still be challenged and they can be updated, as does happen with textbooks. But that's the thing. The Bible claims to be the word of an all-knowing God, not fallible humans. Therefore, we will test it as such. As extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, I expect an extraordinary author to write an extraordinary book.
Which many people use as fact, but it's really a theory, and A very bad theory at that, because it's never been proven, number one. Number two, in all of recorded history, hundreds of years, thousands of years, we haven't seen one creature or one human being evolve, or even show signs of evolving into another creature. Remember, evolution says that a creature, let's say a horse, can evolve into a completely different species. Obviously, there's no proof of this. We haven't seen it. Where is the proof? And the Bible clearly says that God created each creature according to its own kind, meaning according to its own DNA. And we see, that's all we see happening today, really proving that the Bible is more reliable than men, because evolution doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so it's time for the semantics behind science. Any of those that have previously watched my videos and don't want to go through this again, feel free to skip forward 3.5 minutes or go make yourself a coffee, come back and catch up. Okay? It is very good to know that you actually do know there's a difference between fact and theory. However, I do not think you understand what the difference is, especially when using science, as you use theory in the colloquial sense there. What a theory actually is in science, aka a scientific theory, is the very last components that you comprise in your scientific study. You see, in a scientific study, you start off with your hypothesis, which is based upon the previous research or understanding, or just something that you have observed previously. And then you go out and you collect your evidence, you test, you experiment, etc. And with that, you can create laws. And then you use a theory to explain why these laws occur. A theory is not a wild hunch or guess. That is closer to the word hypothesis in science. Okay, so let's have a little look at the stages. Here we have fact A. We all originated from one common ancestor. That is a fact. And here we have fact 2. There is a wide variety of life that exists today. Then we need a law to explain how to get from A to B. So therefore, we must come to the conclusion that over time, special diversion will lead to new species. Okay? Now, what theory does is it gives us the ability, the way, the device, how it works, why it works. The theory of evolution states that the most adaptable creatures to an environment are more likely to therefore pass on their genetics due to being successful, and these genetics then go on, gradually changing the species to become more and more adapted at each generation, which will eventually lead to a separate species entirely, where it could no longer breed with earlier versions. That is the theory. It is, again, not a wild guess. As for the evidence, we have a mountain of evidence. We have the fossil evidence, the genetic evidence, and even the observable evidence, which you claim does not exist, but in fact does so. We can watch how bacteria in the lab will always evolve towards surviving better, and given enough time will become entirely new strains of bacteria entirely. We can also look at species that have become isolated. For example, there are various lizards that have been isolated on islands, and over time their diet has changed. For example, on one island, there was a species of lizard that was originally dropped there that primarily fed on insects. However, they thought they would die out, but when they came back, they found out that the lizards had evolved different jaw shapes to deal with the vegetation on that island. These are all very interesting studies, and there are mountains of them out there, and I would urge you to pick up a science book or just Google them and just have a look, because it is wondrous how this works. And on top of this, it would only take one fossil to be in the wrong layer of rock to disprove the entire theory of evolution. Yet, to date, not one has been brought forth. There has been no primordial poodle, for example. Just think about that. We are open to being proven wrong. It's just that the challengers have been found wanting. Therefore, the evidence does not in fact concur with the Bible, but stands completely against it.
Make any sense. Anyway, the next argument that they bring up is there's no proof of God, so I can't believe in God. Well, what you can ask the atheist is there proof of no God? Obviously, they can't say yes, because there's nothing proving that there's no God. There's no way you can prove there's no God. And another thing, you can ask them, since they trust so much in scientists, is there any human being, even the smartest human being in the earth with the highest GPA, is there any human being that can tell me exactly how many grains of sand there are on each beach in each country in the entire world? Because to say that there's no God, you have to have infinite knowledge. You have to have a knowledge that you can't even imagine to say that there's no God. You have to know everything there is to know. And even the smartest human being on this earth cannot tell you even 0.5% of all there is to know. So why put your trust in that?
Well, this is due to the scientific and philosophical method. Again, let's go back to semantics for a quick bit. Let's talk about the null hypothesis. I do not know if you know what the null hypothesis is. Let me just quickly explain. The null hypothesis is the hypothesis that you are attempting to falsify, thus proving your hypothesis to be correct. So i.e., you try to prove X is right or X exists by disproving the null hypothesis that it does not. In the case for the existence of something, you can only falsify one of these two things. You can't falsify the existence of something. However, you can falsify the non-existence of something. Therefore, it is the non-existence of something that must be taken as the null hypothesis. This is what is also known as the burden of proof, or the default position, because you need to provide evidence to get a person beyond that position. You can't do the reverse and demand that they disprove the existence of God. The only way you can disprove the existence of a God is to find a contradiction in the very definition of that God. For example, an all-loving God that committed genocide to millions of individuals, or killed 42 children by sending out 2 she-bears to slaughter them, as what happens in 2 Kings 2. So I can actually state with absolute certainty that the Christian God, as described in the Bible, does not exist as a fact. Something similar could exist, but as described, no. That is in fact an impossibility. That is why I'm Gnostic atheist towards the 3 Abrahamic gods, whilst I am agnostic atheist towards the other gods. Yet until you can provide evidence for a God, I am not going to leave my position of atheism, as it is the scientifically correct position. As for knowledge, you cannot use that argument. That is the same argument that would state guilty until proven innocent. For we can accept a position which is the default position, i.e. innocent or non-existent in this case, until the other is proven, i.e. being guilty of existence. That is the logic you apply to one aspect of your life. All you now need to do is apply it to the rest of it.
Anyways, so here's some questions we can ask atheists if we ever come into a debate with them. Number 1 is, can death create life? This should stump an atheist, because even scientifically, in the scientific community, you'll never hear that death can create life, because it's impossible. And the scientists should tell you that it's impossible, because it is.
Everything you have eaten has come from a living organism. Therefore, life can come from death, and it is required for the continuation of life. This is the same for a pregnant person, for example. They have to eat more, and they produce more life out of this death. It's a simple fact of nature. As for the evolutionary aspect of life coming from death, without death, the species would never progress, and they would have no requirement to progress, so death is required for evolution. On the chance that you're not referring to either of these cases, but the prospect of life coming from non-life, it is possible. We are capable of replicating those conditions, and whilst at the moment we can only produce very basic, simple compound protocells out of very basic chemicals that can move, respirate, they reproduce, etc., we are getting more and more advanced, We are not a natural process, we are having to learn things from scratch.
The next question you can ask them is, can something come from nothing? Or in other words, can nothing create something? Obviously, it's illogical to believe so, and that's exactly what they believe. So their belief system is pretty... you gotta have more faith than a Christian to be an atheist. Literally, you do. Because it just makes no sense, the basis for their beliefs.
Unluckily for you, philosophy disagrees, as is shown by Occam's razor. i.e. you have to assume that an all-powerful being with the personality to want to create the universe and the ability to create the universe pre-existed the universe. That is, extra unfounded assumptions on top of the universe is capable of creating itself. It's actually very dishonest of you to assert that it takes more faith to believe that the universe merely came into existence in its current form, rather than some magical sky fairy coming into existence in his own form, deciding, I'm going to create the universe, and having the ability to create the universe. That's just where the science and the philosophy sits.
Okay, and the other question you can ask them is, can complete chaos create order? Because according to an atheist, everything came into complete order, into complete existence by confusion, by a blast, by a bam, and everything was there. So with their belief system is that chaos created order, and now as we see the whole earth, everything, every animal, every being has its own purpose, and it works completely in harmony with each other, saying that chaos created order, which is ridiculous. It's like taking a watch or a clock apart, putting it in a shoebox, shaking the box. No matter how many times you shake that box, that watch or clock, it will not come back together again, because you have to individually put the pieces back together. It's impossible.
This is both a straw man and your analogy is false. Let's deal with the analogy first. A synthetic created item is by very definition the exact opposite of natural processes and the results. Therefore, there's no possibility for comparison. You may as well go, we can't heal without God, because if I shoot you, you get hurt. It doesn't even make sense. And then let's go on to the whole thing of chaos. No, we do not believe that chaos created everything, and certainly not chaos created everything as it is. Chaos has occurred, certainly, but that's not what's created everything. What has created everything up to what it is now are multiple processes, natural processes based on physics, chemistry, biology, etc., all working in unison. Now, these processes would have gone a completely different way if you took out one other part. But the universe wouldn't care, it's not trying to get to here and now. This is just the way things happened as such. And they were going to always happen that way with our set of physics. So these physics gradually build up to more advanced systems, but those advanced systems which are built up of multiple lesser systems in no way insert an all-knowing God. Merely that multiple systems can gradually build up to something larger.
Okay, and then the last thing I will say is you can use a painting as an example. You can ask them, okay, if you see a painting of trees, will you suggest that it just appeared, or that there was an artist behind that painting? Obviously, they're going to say, yeah, of course there was an artist behind the painting. And then you can say, okay, so if you believe that an artist was required to make the trees in the painting, why is it that you can look at the trees on the earth, the real trees, and say that there was no one that created those? They just came to be. So it's just pretty illogical to believe the things that they believe.
That is a god-awful analogy. Please pardon the pun. No, by defining it as a painting, you are stating we have previous knowledge that it has a painter. Therefore, you are begging a question. However, what it is more a key to is if we look at a piece of bread and it has mould on it, and that mould is in the shape of a cow, you going, therefore, it must have been put there by someone, because there's no way mould could end up in the shape of a cow. And I just look at you going, what the frack are you on about? Someone could have cultivated that mould to look like a cow, but that doesn't mean necessarily it was, and it's very unlikely.
And with patience and prayer and wisdom, just keep asking God for wisdom and understanding, you'll be able to stump the naysayers and the atheists and the agnostics and have them thinking.
As has hopefully been shown here, not if they have an understanding of science and philosophy.
And with everything you do, any debate or discussion you get into, do it in love, not hostility, and just ask God for patience, ask God to open their eyes and to show them the truth and to save them, and just do it with patience and love, and defend your faith. Keep on learning, as I'm doing. I don't know it all, trust me, but I keep seeking wisdom and knowledge and understanding, and keep asking God to give me more understanding, and just ask God to help you know how to defend your faith intellectual manner, in a manner that makes sense, that's logical, and in a loving manner. And he'll help you out.
Rather than just wishing upon a star for intellectual knowledge, why don't you actually go out and do some research, which may actually be more successful in forwarding your movement? I mean, if any argument is going to be made, it's not going to be made from thought bubbles from people who don't even understand the basic scientific process. That's just going to make a laughingstock of you. Now, I've been relatively kind and relatively clean in this video, so I feel lucky on that aspect.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope these tips will help you in your discussions and debates with any atheists, agnostics, even Buddhists or Hindus, whatever. So I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, bye. God bless.
So yes, that was that video picked apart. I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is Lessons of Thought. Take care.